Greetings, Dapplings, and welcome back to the 4th episode of my Captain of Industry Early Access series. In the last episode, we began the important job of alleviating the pressure on our logistics fleet by switching over to pipes for, well, pretty much whatever we could, to be honest. Be it moving crude oil from the pumps to our fuel refinery, or moving water to our farms and concrete mixers. And on the topic of concrete mixers, we also set up a much larger and more efficient concrete production area, which now makes use of rock for both gravel and sand, which will hopefully keep concrete flowing even if we should run out of slag, though that's less likely. It all depends on how busy our foundry areas are. And on the topic of foundry areas, we also spent some time building an improved and tileable design for our copper foundry. Additionally, we have unlocked new crops and promptly begun to rotate them, which should hopefully mitigate some of the fertility penalty you'll get if you only grow a single crop season over season. And in addition to that, we also upgraded the farms to the much more productive irrigated farms to support an expanding worker population. Now, for today's episode, we're going to be starting off cleaning up and tweaking some of the work that we did in the last episode before we move on to a couple of new projects. So let's get on with that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, talking about the fields and crop rotation, we're actually going to drop the green manure. I feel in agreement with the comments that we received on the last episode that the green manure isn't actually adding much to our production. And it's just giving us a season where we don't produce anything. So if we remove that, we shouldn't see much of a difference there. In fact, if we have a look at the average production, whilst it does increase the fertility equilibrium of the fields, if we look over here on the average production, it actually goes down. So we're going to drop that out of there. Thank you very much for spotting that, by the way. I'm very guilty of assuming that, well, higher fertility, better, but that isn't always the case, and this is a good example of that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is going to be a bit of a long-term project. We're going to start expanding out our land mass. Now, this is probably going to be best done early and in sections. So we're going to be using this mine control tower. We're already using it to some degree. And on that note, I'm also going to change out the dumping options. We're not going to use dirt. We're not going to use gravel. I would much rather we didn't use slag. And we're not going to use just random waste. In fact, the only thing I'm going to allow is rock and also sand, because we will eventually have our own sand production. So let's just use this to get rid of the sandbar where we can. Though sand is quite a loose material, so it will spread out quite far. But what I'm thinking of doing is ideally making a way so we don't have to burn plastic, and also don't end up dumping it into the ocean, but instead use it as a landfill material for like internal areas, cavities. And to that end, we're going to probably flatten out something like this. Let's bring this out. We're going to do this in sections. I think having a 2 wide section, maybe even a 3 wide section would be a better option. Let's bring that out there. And then we're going to bring this all the way up until it meets the land again. Now that will hopefully be made of the general dumping designation. So let's just clean all of that up there. There we go. Now we're not going to strictly need to use this for that job, but let's go ahead and just change things up anyway. If I can bring all of this into this one mine control tower's jurisdiction, we might as well. Yes, we can. Okay, so the only thing I want to be dumped here is rock and indeed sand, and later on we'll do different things. That being said, actually, you know what? I've made all of this at the same level as the land here, and that's actually not what I want to do. Let's go ahead and change this up. It's very easy to forget to do that. But what I would like is, ideally, we're going to need an area where it borders. But if we bring this out to about here, let's see. If I'm very specific and I bring that up to level 2, let's just make a little flattened area. Something like that will do. I want this to flatten out, and then from here, I guess I could also have it flatten. Oh, no, that's wrong. I could also have it flatten here as well. There we go. But from this point, I would actually like it to go down by a level. So we're going to actually bring down the ramp just one elevation. And from that elevation, we will then flatten out. And the reason why I'm doing this is later on I would like to add topsoil. A topsoil of dirt. So right at the moment, we're just going to be expanding this out in both directions, ideally. So once again, we'll just bring this out until it's somewhat level. Let's bring that in there. I'll allow that to be filled out with rock, but then we want to bring that down by 1 and then flatten that out. And that should give us a nice barrier that we can then fill this cavity with plastic and whatever else we have eventually, and then just top up the topsoil. Eventually, we might need to fix these little areas where there's probably going to be a little bit of rock there. Alternatively, I could just tell them to use dirt now, but we don't really have a stockpile of dirt yet, whereas I hope that eventually we're going to have that. So that's job 1 done. I would also like to set up some storage, in fact, for dirt. Now, there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can either go ahead and use a regular storage device. Now, you might end up needing quite a lot of these to store a large volume of dirt, but, you know, it's going to be something you're going to want eventually. Or you can just dump the dirt into a tower. You can make a dirt mound. Well, that's not something we're going to need to worry about for quite some time, but for now, let's go ahead and just pop this over here. We'll tile a couple of them together so that they can just all fill up with dirt. And that way, we only need to tell the first one that it's allowed to store dirt in it, and then it'll just slowly filter all the way down. There we go. Important. We want this to be kept full at all times. There we go, and I'll just let them build that as and when. Though I will increase the priority on this one just to make sure that it gets done over the others so that dirt can start being stored in there. We've also finished Research Lab 2. Fantastic. Let's have a look at what we can now look at. In fact, we've researched everything that is available to us prior to Research Lab 2. So give me a moment to decide on the priority of our new researches. Okay, now, at the moment we don't have Research Labs 2, so nothing that I queue up here is really going to get done for a little while, but still, I've got an idea of what I would like to get. Now, unfortunately, we can't go for Advanced Diesel yet because we don't have ocean drilling technology. We haven't even repaired the dock, so that's a little ways away. So I think the most pressing things for us to care about are going to be Maintenance Depot 2, which is always going to be very useful for us. And then following that, let's go for Power Generation 2, and we'll grab settlement power before jumping into mechanical power storage. Sometimes I do this the other way around, but honestly I want to be able to use that excess power because there's not really going to be much of a way for us to scale this down as much as I would normally, and so we're just going to go straight for trying to get that into the settlement to get Unity production. Hopefully by the time that we've done all of this, we can then go for advanced steel. Now then, the next job on our list is to set up the automatic delivery of food. I mentioned this in the previous episode that by building the food storage on this side, it was a bit of a dumb because realistically I want to be delivering that via conveyors, so let's get to work on that. And also, for the time being, do we have enough to make this happen? Don't know, because we're going to need to set up the production of research equipment in order to build the tier 2 research lab. So for the time being, I think we can safely turn off our research labs. We've got a couple of other jobs to do in this episode before we start worrying about that. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to need to copy these over, and for that we're going to just grab you host. Oh, actually, that was the pipette tool. Now I haven't really left myself much room down here, if I'm perfectly honest, so it's kind of a bother. Maybe instead of that, we'll move these aside and rebuild these, the 2 of them right there. That way we can convey the taters and the leafy greens over here fairly easily. Now I'm going to want a place to store any excess for later because we are almost certainly going to want to use them in the anaerobic digester to make some compost that basically make dirt out of them. Now the taters can be stored in loose storage, but the leafy greens have to be stored in unit storage. So let's set those up right now. We'll have taters about here, I think, and leafy greens can go right there. We'll leave plenty of room for other things to get in there. Now I'm going to want to give them priority. They will be coming out of different ports on the farms, which is going to make things a lot easier for us. And ultimately I want to give priority to the settlement before we try to store them. So we are going to require a U-shaped balancer for the taters. That one can go right there. And a flat balancer for the leafy greens, and that one can go right about there. There we go. Let's bring all of these out straight away. Leave enough room for the leafy greens to rise up over this conveyor belt. There we go, and then we can have that head in there. And we'll probably make this one, the closest one, for taters. Unfortunately, our lack of construction materials is really going to start hampering us. But we can at least lay out the initial plans for it. So following that, we're going to want a flat conveyor coming straight up and over, and then heading up here as well. And exactly the same on this side. In fact, no, I haven't really allowed enough room there for that to connect. It'll look a little bit more uniform if we have it connect like that anyway. And then after that, we'll have conveyor belts moving all the way up here. Now again, we want to give priority out in this direction. I don't know which one I'm going to be using for it, but let's just highlight both of them. That way we're not going to have any issues. How is copper production going at the moment? We are chock-a-block on copper. That's amazing. Okay, I'm very happy with that indeed, actually. How are we doing for iron? Well, it's kind of all over the place, actually. We need to set up a very similar design for the copper foundry for the iron foundry, I think, to maximize the way that things are getting moved around. Though it looks like you've actually done a fair bit of work getting that up and running, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's speed things up a little bit, though. Now, to get everything we want for this over here, we're going to need a little bit more room. So to that end, I think we're going to have to decide on adding in a couple of extra storages for wood. Now, the problem with this is that unfortunately, these are largely going to be in the way until I eventually get them moved. But for the time being, that will allow us to hopefully get rid of all of these trees. Let me just have a look at which trees are selected. Yes, we more or less want all of these out of the way, so that should be fine. We've only got one tree harvester to do the work, though, which is a bit of a shame. We are also going to be moving up our maintenance and construction part manufacturing over here, ideally, since quite a lot of the materials that we're going to be needing are going to be in this location. Namely, we are going to want to bring up the electronic parts production, and we can probably do that now, simply because copper is the larger component in electronic parts. We need 8 copper to 2 rubber every 60 seconds, so we'll convey the rubber up there. Right now it's the opposite. We're hauling the copper down here, and that's a very, very inefficient way of doing it, and not least because we are just hauling it per construction batch rather than into a storage. Honestly, this entire area is just riddled with inefficiencies that I would very, very much like to get sorted. So give me just a moment to shimmy things around a little bit, and I shall bring you back when we are ready to start work on the iron smelting area. And welcome back to the majority of our construction part 1 facilities having been moved over. Now, we've still got a couple of belts just to lay, and I figured I'd do those on camera with you since it's fairly easy and you'll get to see the process. But at this point, we have brought over more or less everything that we previously had at the old facility. We'll just bring that across and move across by 1 and then down. Again, you want to leave 2 spaces for the elevation shift of each elevation for a belt. And you always want to branch off from the belt before changing elevation so you don't create a banking turn, like I've done here for demonstration. For example, it's probably going to be, no, occasionally it does work, but probably going to be impossible for me to build off that or connect to it because that is now very much a banking turn. This one isn't so bad because the turn banks on this corner, but it's a little bit harder to manage where the bank is going to begin if you're turning into an elevation change. So that's why I always like to just step out by 1 point. Now we're going to pop this one on a boost as well. We've got loads of Unity, so we may as well be making use of it. And of course, we're going to need a way for these materials to exit the facility as well. But that is all that we're going to need for construction part 1. Now, whilst we were getting all of that built up, I did notice that we are slowly decreasing in our rubber production, so I had a quick check over at the rubber factory, and yeah, the reason for that is that we're no longer delivering any coal. Bit of a problem there in the waiting, so how about we address that right now by quickly removing this. We'll pop down a U-shaped load balancer, and then we'll just, well, it's going to be a little bit squirrely, and I do apologize for that, but we're going to get the coal delivered over to the rubber factory more or less directly. We could squirrel our way back through there, But I think maybe we will avoid being that squirrely and instead we'll go right around like this. And again, leave a little bit of room for the elevation change and then down. There we go. That will bring the coal directly into the rubber factory itself. Do we have enough materials to make this happen quickly? Looks like we don't, sadly. But we do have the materials available, or rather, we've got all of the base materials needed to make that, so I'm not going to worry too much about that one. Now, you'll notice that I have prepped, but I have disabled these buildings from being built. We will expand into them with time. Also, how is our sandbank removal going? It's not going terribly, but it could do with a little bit more work, I feel. Let's make sure that we are actually evening that out where we can. In fact, let's expand that out even more. Let's go all the way up there, and then we'll just mark this area to be completely flattened if we can. Or at least quite a lot further back than we are right now. There we go, that'll be marvellous. Now, on that note, we are getting a problem with our plastics. I've temporarily managed it by giving a storage location, because eventually I'm going to want quite a lot of plastic down here to fill in the interior cavities of the new landmasses we're making. But for the time being, I kind of need to use it up so that it's not in the way, because if plastic obviously starts to accrue, that is going to make our people very, very unhappy. So how about we pop down a mine control tower over here, and I will quick build this if I'm able, and I am, thank goodness. And we are going to change this area over here. I'm going to tell you specifically to only use waste for dumping. And to that end now, we will expand this ramp out quite aggressively. And that should be a good use for the plastic for the time being. Though I'm going to have to get rid of those trees as well. So let's mark those to be chopped as a bit of a priority there. There we go. That is going to allow us to have somewhere to put the plastic, which we're eventually going to be able to collect. Now, you could just dump it in the water. Again, I'm just being finicky. I just don't like the idea of dumping plastic in the water if I absolutely don't have to. And we're going to have a use for it eventually. We're going to seal off an area so it can't get into the ocean at large, and then we're going to use the plastic to create a foundation and then cover that with with a top layer of dirt. To that end, though, I am starting to think that maybe this is a very ambitious area that we've got set up over here. So how about instead we do this? Let's just draw that all the way up to the shoreline if we can. What you're seeing here, by the way, the dig designation, is there's an awful lot of areas where there's just a slight difference in the elevation. If I turn off the mining and dumping designations, you can see obviously that one's a little bit more extreme. But there's loads of little lumps of dirt here and there. So I want to flatten that out where I can. We're currently working on building an excavator for that job. Though that excavator is itself going to need a truck, and honestly, we could do with a couple of extra trucks, so let's set that up as well. We're almost done with additional storage options for our food. Right now the food is getting to where it needs to be, and that's the main thing, but I do want an export route for the food as well. In fact, we are backing up food quite aggressively with our rather meager population. We've got 240 off 420. Yes, 420. But moving aside, we have got to get some sort of digester set up so that we can create fuel gas and compost with all of this excess, because right now it's going to go to waste. That being said, if we can double our population, maybe we're going to start reaching the limit of this. It's going to be interesting to see where the population can sit for these two farms alone to be able to sustain them. That will actually be quite an interesting one for us to find out, because that will give us an idea of this kind of size of modular cities if we are going to have the farms nearby to supply each one. Now, all we've done so far is we've moved up our construction facility, and that does mean that we can get rid of this one then. So let's go ahead and demolish that one, no longer needed. Instead, next job is to move along the production of construction parts 2. Now, I would very much like to have the same thing over here. We'll probably allow for 5 of them to be built. Let's go ahead and grab you. Oh, once again, that's the wrong thing. We want to copy it. Pipette tool does not copy the building, only copies the settings. Now, since we have brought up the manufacture of electronic parts, this can go straight into the facility here. So we've got everything we're going to need nice and close by. But let's leave a little bit of a gap there and then plonk down 5 of these in line. Again, I'm not going to build all 5. In fact, we're probably only going to build 1. We will go for what we currently have, what we're currently producing, and replicate that system before we start expanding it. But marking the area I need for it is going to be useful. Alright, from there, we're going to want a belt coming all the way out. And for the time being, just because it saves me a bit of time, I'm not going to belt up all of them, because the belt would be built and then some product would just sit on the belt waiting. I guess I could pause the belt, I suppose. And to that end, in fact, let me go ahead and fast build these with Unity. Again, we've got so much Unity, there's no reason for us not to be using it for things like this. Right, there we go. That should take care of the automated production. We are a little bit low on iron, though. Is there a particular reason for that? Well, other than this is grossly inefficient and we need to rebuild our iron smelting, our iron foundry as soon as we possibly can. We will get to that. Let me go ahead and copy this over. Just about there will in fact do. Then we're going to want a belt taking these products straight out and over and down. All right, about there. There we are. And then we are, of course, going to want to get a storage unit for this. Hook that up. And make sure that this one is set for construction parts. And there we go. We'll more or less have everything we need. Now, I've managed to reduce the logistics strain on quite a lot of the products moving around here from what we originally had, which was pretty much everything had to be delivered manually to each of the construction facilities. And at this point, we have to bring along regular supplies of iron and wood, of course, but quite a lot of this is otherwise delivered automatically to the production facilities themselves. So we can stockpile very large amounts, so an entire truckload of wood can be delivered at once, an entire truckload of iron can be delivered at once, not just enough to run 1 or 2 batches. We can spend some time filling this up when the logistics fleet is otherwise idle, when there isn't too much work to do. They can spend time shimmying things around into the various storages, and then when production starts kicking up because we've just built something, then the lion's share of the logistics is handled by conveyor belts, so it's automatic, which is going to take a lot of strain off everything else. I am, for the time being, going to allow this to do half and half. Half will be delivered direct to the assembly, and half will be delivered to the unit storage. I don't think we need to worry about that otherwise. I will pop a boost down there, though, and we will, at this point, delete our old Construction Parts 2 factory. That is going to be a big help because it's going to remove a lot of strain off the system. Now, we've got a load of copper there just sat there waiting to go somewhere, and that is a bit of a problem. Eventually, that will get shifted somewhere, but for the time being, that's just going to have to be what it is. Right, we've got the storage facility up and running. The other nice thing about this is obviously we're going to be able to store more construction parts than can sit in the output ports of a factory, which is what we had previously. Very, very painfully inefficient. Now, on the note of storage, let's go ahead and continue bringing the belt around, because we are going to need to bring over the electronic parts as well. So let's try and get that all in the right place. You know what? Since this only requires 2 things, we'll just shimmy a little bit closer. There we are. And you may notice that I've got this line a little bit further up than this one, and that's because these require 3 inputs, so I have to accommodate the distance necessary to bring a conveyor on the 3rd level down to ground level. But over here we only need 2 components, so I only need to accommodate a conveyor on the 1st level. Well, 1st or ground, depending on where you live. The 1st level might be the bottom level, but hopefully it's clear what I mean there. Right, that should take care of itself, which means that at this point we've taken care of bringing coal over to the rubber factory, and we have finished completely automating or automating to the best of our current abilities the construction part factory. So the next big job, and it is going to be a big job, this one, is replicating what we've got for the copper foundry over here for iron. Now, the nice thing about this particular job is that we are going to be able to do this by copying. So if we grab all of this up to and including the first layers, well, actually, we'll go all the way to this. That is the entire facility that we're going to need, and if we bring it just a little bit further down, this is all we're going to need for iron. And this is the beauty of having these things set up in this way, in a modular form. There we are. Let's pop that down. All we need to get rid of out of this blueprint is the pipes. Those are not going to be necessary because that's only required for water, for copper. But otherwise, this entire setup is perfect. We do need to change over the types of materials, and that is scrap iron and iron ore instead of scrap copper and copper ore. But otherwise, that will be the entire system. And then we just drop in a storage as well. We'll just line that up there. Actually, did we line that up directly behind? No, we gave it a little bit of wiggle room, and I think it's generally a good idea to do that. There we are. And we'll just connect those up. Right, you notice that everything is currently paused, and that is by design. This way, we can unpause sections at a time. We'll bring the whole system online, the storage bins first, and then the conveyors, and then eventually we'll get the foundries themselves built as well. These are relatively cheap things to make, so I'm okay with having these active. But we're going to wait on the large constructions, on the large buildings. Right, have we got everything set up over here? Not quite, so let's give them a helping hand if we can. And it does look like we can. There we go. That will massively improve our production of construction parts too, because previously they were having to gather them. Again, they were just basically, we could store as much as could sit in a factory, and we really want to be a little bit further along than that. Okay, now this is going to take us quite some time to get put together, so while that's all going down, let's have a look at elsewhere. Thank you very much. We've managed to harvest all of those trees. The next job then, let's just clear up the trees from the rest of the area. Are there any more trees on this lower area? No. Okay, well, that's perfect then. In that case, let's start digging back these trees. I want to constantly be removing wood where we can. Have we completed the construction over here? We have not. We're waiting on iron. We're also going to want at least another excavator and pickup truck as well for future plans that we will get to shortly. But right now, it's just a lot of waiting for our modest logistics fleet to carry the materials where they need to be. They've actually done a really good job of getting this up and running. Once we've got an expanded iron foundry, that is going to really catapult us to the next step. So I shall see you back here when that's done. And here we go. Our iron factory is set up for using copper. That is not exactly what we needed. No, I'm very glad that I noticed that actually. Let's set these both up for iron scrap and iron ore and remove the copper. There we go. Always sanitize your inputs. It is so ridiculously easy to miss out. Let's do exactly the same over here. This is what happens when you copy from other buildings. There we go, and this is probably, yeah, that's also set up for copper. There we are. Everything is now as it should be, I think. And just because I'm finicky, let's do that. Though, realistically, it should work on scrap above iron ore where possible. Also, we're not really going to need these to be having any automatic deliveries. Deliveries from the logistics fleet. We do want them to receive the deliveries from conveyors. But there we are. That is all done, and we have started to strip down the old facility. Okay, so that's another big job off the list. Now, the next job is to set up automation for our maintenance supplies. That's a fairly important one, actually. Now, that one is going to have two inputs, mechanical parts and electronic parts. It's going to need twice as many mechanical parts, and mechanical parts only need iron. So in much the same way that we've moved electronic parts over to the copper manufacturing area because it uses a lot more copper than anything else, we are going to do the same down here. We're going to have the mechanical parts being manufactured down in this area. Also, we are out of trees for our tree harvester to harvest, so let's go ahead and help out a little bit more there. Let's get a little bit more trees going down, and also the ones up there as well. That would be fantastic. Right, Additionally, I do believe that we've actually made some progress with getting all of this on the go. We've got an excavator over there taking care of things, and I'm really, really strongly considering popping down another mine control tower just down here. In fact, we are definitely going to do that. So I'm going to pop that in. We're just going to squeeze this little job in. It wasn't on the docket for today, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. As I would very much like this facility to focus. Actually, let's edit this area down a little bit. I want this facility to focus on this area. I want to pull apart all of the stone in this area if I'm able. I would like to move this mountain. We're basically going to push this entire area back a fair old ways, back up to the sea, in fact. So getting an extra excavator helping out with that would be very, very wise. And to that end, let's go ahead and set this up right now. Let's flatten this, and we'll just bring that all the way across there. That's going to provide us with an awful lot of stone, but also this excavator will then ideally help out over here as well. In fact, we're going to set this whole area up to be dug back. We definitely want this excavator, or rather this excavator in the coal area to help out with gathering the coal. But if we have a look at the coal seam, it goes a fair old ways back. In fact, we might want another excavator besides, as well as another truck, to help out with the coal gathering, because we are using coal in quite a lot of places. But back to maintenance. So I think having a system much the same as we've got over there would be fine, though I'm thinking having it change direction rather than continuing on in this direction towards the water's edge. We'll have it start moving out in this direction. I think that would be a lot wiser. Now, if we have a look at the grid pattern, I've really started to take to having like room, not so much for a main bus, but I know people are going to say it, but having like an entire grid space or two, depending on how much materials are moving around, basically leaving ample room between manufacturing or factories, if you like, and the storages that are servicing them. So to that end, we will have iron picked up from all the way down here. Now, this is a bit of an excessive move here. Actually, I think I've got that going the wrong way. Yes, indeed I do. So let's yoink you, turn you around. There we go. I really do love the cut and paste options. Now, this will be for iron. This one is no longer going to allow... Oh, actually, yeah, that is currently set not to allow any export because we copied it over from the copper, I suppose. That was a bit of a mistake there, frankly, but glad to have noticed it. We will have these set up. We can really pop them anywhere we want, but we are going to set up, let's say, 3 for now. We're probably going to want more than that in the future, but let's work with 3 for the time being. Now, how far back do we want the belt? Well, again, you've got 2 elevations per belt. How far can this go up? It can go, so, ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor. And from here, so we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a branch off the belt, so 7 in total. So if we assume that the belt will run from this location and up, then that will allow us all the room that we're possibly going to need. Now, one thing to be aware of with this, is very tempting to just go and lay everything down, and that's fine, because especially in planning mode, it's all paused. However, trucks will still respect the positioning of belts. Even though they're not... they haven't been unpaused, they will still treat them as obstacles to their maneuvering. So I would recommend only build the belts as you need them. By all means, build the factories, sure, but don't build the belts until you actually are going to need to move them around. That being said, let's have this come all the way down to... Well, actually, let's take this a little bit further. We're going to have the belt balancer about there, I'm going to say. Sure. And then we will have that in position to accept from it. So this is going to be the output of mechanical parts. Let's set that one up. There we are, mechanical parts. However, we are more than likely going to deliver these elsewhere in part of the chain. So we also want to have this down here, and again, having it further down just gives me more room to play with belts later. I'm very guilty of, in a game which has got as much space as this has, and I'm even more guilty of it in something which has even more space, for example, Factorio, of not allowing myself enough space to move things around. Actually, we want to just shimmy that across just a little bit. In fact, let's shimmy all of this across just a little bit, just to keep with the theme that we've got going. So at this point, we will actually have that move down. So we've given even more room, but this is just room for me to play around with should I need it. I love using the cut tool as a de facto delete tool, because you just cut it and then just right click to cancel the build and it's gone. Right, then we're going to want to have maintenance facilities. Now, I would like to assume that there is a belt going up there, let's say. And we are going to want that. Let's just shimmy across just a little bit. Should be fine. We're going to want 2. Now, 2 is probably going to be all that we're going to need for a very, very long time. One thing I have learned from my stream series of Captain of Industry is that 2, as long as you keep upgrading the maintenance facilities, you can actually manage an enormous factory of just 2, as long as they don't have any kind of stalls in their supply of materials. They'll go for a long, long time. Let's go ahead and pop this in position. Actually, I'm kind of deciding against moving that all the way down. Now, I will cover Y in just a second. Let's have that going there. And this is one of the advantages to laying things out. If I had this being my main bus, let's say right now I've only got 2 materials, that's fine. I've got enough room for this. Let's actually just lay that down. And then that would branch up there, and then this one would have to come up by 1. I've got enough room to elevate it by 1, but I don't have enough room to elevate it by 2 or 3 or 4, so on and so forth. So having the kind of the main delivery line being here will work out for me, I think. Actually, I prefer to have the lower line first in the queue. There are a lot of good reasons why to have the lower line the last in the queue, but I prefer to have it first, just for aesthetic reasons, really. Right, we'll bring this one up, straight up there, and all the way across, branch off, and then immediately down. There we go, that's everything we're going to need. There we are, and that will take care of... we're actually going to need this one to be pulling in electronic parts, so we're going to want that to be kept full. There we are. And that should take care of maintenance for now. I'm going to say here, though, that there is a priority on delivering mechanical parts to the maintenance supply. This is an extremely high priority industry, so we're going to want that done first and foremost. Right, with all of that in place, let's go ahead and unpause everything, but then repause these 2. There we go. Now, do we have enough Unity to build all of this? Possibly not, but let's have a look. Alright, we've managed to get quite a lot of that Unity built, in fact. Marvellous. Okay. Right, well, in that case, have I set this up for import? I'm a devil when it comes to having separate factory buildings and storage buildings for very express purposes. Even when sometimes that actually impacts the efficiency of the factory in the short term, especially when it's a very early factory like this. But later on, I find that having that as your habit means that you will have designated drop-off and designated pickup zones. And that can be a big help, I feel. So we'll leave that one as is. Right, I want this one set up. We may as well go for a boost on that one as well. And at this point, we can tear this one down. Hopefully we'll get that all put together nice and quickly. Can I help out with the quick deliver? I can indeed, so let's do that. In fact, let's see if I can't Unity build most of this. Wow, we actually can. Ah, that's the glory of having a proper iron smelter set up. Oh, my lord, it's been a while. It's been unnecessarily long, frankly. Alright, there we go. Everything is where it needs to be, and we will go ahead and we will also boost this one. There we are. Now, we are going to have to wait on the first delivery, though that may have just arrived, or possibly not. Either way, let's get rid of you. I guess I'll allow that to just be stockpiled in there. Hopefully we can get most of these cleared out soon. We do need to work on the vehicle components. In fact, we need to properly set up a production line for that sort of stuff. We'll wait until we're actually seeing these materials arrive at this maintenance depot before I demolish this one. I think that's probably a wise course of action there. Let's have a look at our stockpile. Okay, I should imagine that they're going to be delivering that shortly, so that's fine. Right, let's get an extra excavator down here. You can have a single truck, and you are going to get another truck and another excavator, because coal is incredibly important to us. Right, that should take care of quite a lot of things. Have we got any more trucks on the way? Let's grab another 2. And since this one's going to be quite far away from its destination, we'll add in an extra one there as well. So I'm actually very happy with having mechanical parts all set up, along with automated maintenance. Now the mechanical parts are being delivered automatically, and indeed the electronic parts as well. So this one can now go, and we can clear up even more room. I'm really happy with the progress we're making in this episode. Alright, this iron stockpile can go as well, slowly transitioning from our early temporary setup. Now the next thing that we're going to need is lab equipment. Now, how does one make lab equipment? Let's have a look. It may require the upgraded facility. To that end, then, let's go ahead and upgrade one of these. Easily got the materials for it, so we're actually going to quick deliver. In fact, we're going to do that on both of these. Let's quick deliver to both. Get them going. And then I'll be able to see the new recipes that will allow. Let's speed up the game a little bit just to get all of that done. There we are. Now that's going to be a huge help. In fact, I mean, this will produce 6 every 60 seconds, but the upgraded one will already produce 12. So let's not worry about the boosts on these anymore. I think we're safe to pull those down to regular levels. So that is going to spike the amount of power that we're going to be drawing, unfortunately. All 3 of our engines are currently running. To that end, then, let's go ahead and we could hook up 2 more. I think that's probably going to be wise. Let's go ahead and get those in place. I'll unpause those. There we go. I believe these are all set up on priority 11. Yeah, we'll just leave those. They'll manage themselves. Right, so with that done, having a look at the lab equipment. Now, what do we need for that? Just mechanical parts and electronic parts, okay. Could be set up in either location because it uses exactly the same amount, but we're going to have more space down here, so I'm inclined to do it here then. But since you've seen me set up more or less this exact same setup a couple of times now, I just skipped straight to having it done. There we go. The lab equipment is now prepped. We are going to be bringing that off the belt. Let's make sure that, yeah, that's still got priority. And this should still have priority there to go to the maintenance depot. That way, only the offshoots will be delivered down here. Now, it's going to take a little while, I should imagine, to get that on the go. There we are. Now, this is going to produce 12 lab equipment per turn. How much time do we need for that? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do realistically is to upgrade this. So we're going to need electronic parts, and we're actually going to need 10 lab equipment as well. Do we have the electronic parts available? Well, I don't yet have that pinned, but it's easy enough for us to go and check, I suppose. Let's see. Electronic parts, we don't actually have that available, unfortunately. It's been largely brought down here in order to make sure that our maintenance depot is running at full bore, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. Let's have a look. Yeah, it looks like... Oh, actually, no, we managed to get enough. I suppose we could pull out of there for quick build. Maybe I should keep that in mind, because that's maybe not what we want, ultimately. Now, this is capable of producing items, and now has an input point. So, we may actually want to move this around, and it would ultimately be nice if I could have it just delivered. Still, we are going to need a little bit stockpiled in order to build with, but let's select a new research and just see how this goes. Maybe having this delivered to a single research lab for the time being isn't going to be so bad, but we'll have to have a think about that one. We've easily got enough workers, so we can finally start on research. So we've already got everything queued up there, so let's just unpause this and see how it goes. Missing input. Alright, so right now it's not actually producing anything because we don't yet have the means to manage recycling. So we're not going to produce any recyclables, and that is effectively what we would be producing here. My lord, tripping over my tongue there, I do apologize.
But this needs 4 every 60 seconds. We are producing 12 every 60 seconds. So realistically, we probably do actually want to have that being delivered. But still, let's go ahead and upgrade this one as well, and we'll allow that one to get there when it can. How much can this hold? That can hold 40 lab equipment at a time. See, this is the awkward thing, is because we do actually need it to be stockpiled somewhere. I do need to drop that off, but eventually we're not going to need this. We definitely don't need 180 of it stockpiled, which is a bit of a problem. We'll have to see how we can resolve that problem in the future, though, because we don't want to end up with loads of just random lab equipment sitting around. That being said, eventually we're going to want to upgrade it, and the regular lab equipment will be a component in that, so maybe it's a problem that will solve itself. But I think that's a good place to wrap things up. We've actually done a lot of work in today's episode, though not a lot of new stuff has been built. A lot of the old temporary stuff has been upgraded and made into a more permanent setup. So to recap, we have fixed up the fields a little bit, because those were kind of all over the place, and actually even still we are massively overproducing food. Whether we still will be once our population gets up to 420, well, we'll have to see about that one. Though I just noticed that you're already done with all your work. Thank you very much for your hard work. We are going to put you to task over hither. You get in there with your truck there. There we are. Marvellous. That will help out quite a lot. But we have moved all of our construction materials, both Tier 1 and Tier 2, over here. We've got electronics being produced automatically over here. So a lot of this episode has been removing the reliance on trucks for our logistics and trying to move production facilities closer to the materials which they use with greatest abundance. We've added a temporary storage over here for dirt and plastics. Well, whether that's going to be enough to actually help us with what we're going to be trying to do over here, that remains to be seen. But the biggest thing that has helped us realistically is the expansion of our ironworks. In fact, now we are running low on iron, so we probably want to increase our excavators for that. So I will, in fact, since I just moved on over here, let's pull you back from there, and we will instead move you up here, and we'll add an extra truck. That should help out a little bit. We've got iron flowing finally. That has been a big hiccup for us for quite some time. In fact, we're actually starting to store enough over there that at this point should be able to tell both the ship and the shipyard to be repaired. So in the next episode, we're finally going to get out into the ocean and actually start causing a bit of a commotion. But all of those ocean commotions will have to wait until the next episode, I am afraid. I really do hope you have enjoyed today's episode, though, and will be joining me for the next. As always, if you liked, then do consider dropping a like or a comment down below. I always look forward to your feedback. But until next time, do take care, everyone.